Not all open world games require a gaming console. You know this already, of course, but there is an abundance of open world games for mobile devices that come out on a daily basis. If you are looking for that one legitimate game that actually works for you, well, here's our list of the top 30 open world games of 2022 up until this very day, ready to go for your Android and iOS devices as well. Let's go. And number one, just to get this one out of the way though, and whatever question y'all have since its review last year, see, Warframe, which is just one of the biggest MMORPGs the past few years, after an entire year of silence, received an update just a few hours ago, and it says that the game's actually releasing for Android devices too early next year. Upon release, the game will support crossplay and includes everything the series had released to this day. In any case, we just got a new gameplay trailer for it too. Coming up behind that from roughly 10 days ago, we've got over here something called Project Stars. Well, what is touted as an open-world science fiction sandbox exploration RPG, and one with a focus on building, crafting, and combat, where you're just out literally discovering not only planets but universes. I don't really think there's just much to talk about with this one, as the game is pretty early. It's free, you gotta use the link down in the description, and just, if you did, let me know what you think about this one later. Moving on. Next up at number 3, with over 1 million downloads since earlier this year, we've got something called One State RP. Guys, One State is one of the first role-playing open world games that has passed all of the correct vibe checks for literally every age. It's a semi-battle royale style action shooter, kind of halfway like Saints Row but in smaller scales, where in maps of up to 500 people you go about surviving a mental world. Here you can play as a police, military man, earn stuff, drive tanks, and spend the rest of your life without even noticing. Game's free and takes you down for only 100 megabytes of space in the beginning though. Sitting on the Google Play Store ready for pre-register, at number 4 we've got over here Dawnlands. This is just a quick mention, guys, in case you missed it. The game is an exploration-based open-world survival / MMORPG, albeit in minimal portions. It's more of an action-adventure though, just like Zelda games, which is less action. In case you're wondering, you can use the link down in the description. Just make sure to stay tuned for a precise release date for the full game. At number 5, we've got over here one of the lesser mentioned, most underrated open world games of all time on the Play Store, in case you missed it. Something called Nemean Legends Vandals. Well, the sequel to Nemean Brightridge. Now, for a $4 game, this is legitimately one of the top best controller support story-focused adventures there is out there on the Play Store. It's got a great concept and some divine music to go with it all. If you do like what you see over here in the trailer, do not hesitate with this one for a single second. Coming up behind that, we've got once again Asphalt. Well, a game that's described to be the first cross-platform post-apocalyptic MMORPG that's ever made with true crossplay support between PCs to mobile devices. Well, technically, as is promised by its developers. Asphalt is now up for pre-register, ready to go in a few regions. The game is, believe it or not, one of the top 5 biggest mobile games in its beta right now. Quite reminiscent of old Fallout games and said to be coming out fully in about a few months. Moving on, we've got one of the most advanced racing games of the past few years, something called Car X Street. Has to be literally the best looking car racing game that came out in 2022. Well, Car X Street has been a long time coming, so it's in its current state though on the Apple Store, almost fine-tuned to perfection. The game is set to be coming out for Android devices as well on the Google Play though, even though it's been out there on a few unofficial websites. But on the Google Play Store, it's going to be coming out in about a month from now. That's all there is to it. If you have missed it, this is how the game actually looks. One of the best games you can play alone at the moment. Wilderness over here is pretty much a casual open world game where there is just no missions, no enemies, no challenges, you just gotta chill. In this game, there's just you and a whole wide world to roam around and explore for the fun of it. Wilderness is not a free-to-play game, however, it'll take you down for $3 and it is also an offline game. It was just a quick mention, we're gonna move on now. At number 9, we've got Sky Children of the Light. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you are already familiar with this one, but just in case, this is an adventure game by the same creators of Journey that originally came out to Apple Arcades only and now playable free totally all the way on Android devices too. This game's honestly perfectly adapted to touchscreens, but with a controller this game is on a whole other level. It is playable online with friends even, and as always, has beautiful visuals and a soundtrack that matches the rest of the game heavenly. Moving on.
But stop a man or a devil.
Quick mention over here, just an honorable mention as an oldest game of the list. Actually, this one released more than a decade ago, but believe it or not, still it gets thousands of downloads today. We've got over here something called Six Guns, an action, offline, semi-open world third-person shooter about the adventures of a bounty hunter. It's sort of halfway a Red Dead inspired game, but more like the old ones that used to be just shooting games. It is free all the way and literally bug-free in its current state.
Death makes you run in the wild, wild west.
Now, Guns at Dawn, on the other hand, is, well, sort of a mix of arena shooters and a little bit of Red Dead. Now, funny enough, it's a lot like the previous game I mentioned, albeit its release only last year. It's pretty much another Red Dead classic co-op shooter, albeit for phones, with a very similar formula and very safe to assume, I'd say, one of the most fun you're gonna have with your friends on your cell phones, if you do like what you see here, or if Red Dead is just your thing. Downloaded only 10,000 times since June this year. I've been waiting for a chance to talk about this one for a month now, since we don't have sport games lists over here. But we've got over here Bicycle Pizza Delivery, an open world, well, action, racing, delivery with bicycle sim. One of the lesser mentioned games on the Play Store with hundreds and hundreds of missions to finish before it lets you go about your life. Game's playable offline, quite bug free, and it is actually the work of a veteran for this type of game. Moving on with a 4.6 review score and over 1 million downloads since only 2 months ago. We've got over here Car Driving Online. Well, you don't want to get fooled by the title though, it's not exactly an online game, but still with some stunning graphics, highly realistic physics, online multiplayer mods, and an open world, filled to the brim with content and different cars. This game is free, it only takes you down for 700 megabytes of space, it is playable offline even, and this is how it really works. Downloaded over 10 million times ever since its release, Walking Zombie 2, in case you are new to, is a classic first-person shooter and a story-focused action RPG at its core. See, what you'd probably get by mixing the story-focused formula of the Telltale, The Walking Dead games with the addition of survival game mechanics and some good old horde shooting. This one's playable offline, you don't need to worry about ads either. It's free for some reason, and I have never ever heard about a bug with this one. At number 15, guys, we've got over here Exile Survival. This is an RPG-style post-apocalyptic survival sim in which your main goal is to save your life. Now, imagine what you'd get by mixing an RPG like Wild Arms, that aesthetic, with something like Mad Max. Well, the result would be what we have here, Exile. Game's got every single element of a survival and RPG game, actually a lot like Fallout games but in small scales, more like the older ones that used to be top-downs. It's free all the way and takes you about only 100 megabytes of space as well. Dragon Quest Builders came out earlier this year, but it finally went through its official worldwide release, and it is now sitting on the Play Store since a couple of months now for the price of $30. Which is insane, I know. As an honorable mention, especially for the series' fans, this has to be the single best and most visually and scale-wise biggest game of its release month. And boy, for the $35 price it takes, does it actually deliver on cell phones. If you are in doubt right now, just buy it. If you do like post-apocalyptic survival games, well, set in open world aesthetics, of course, you probably won't need to look any further than Tigra, what we have here. This is a first-person shooter where you go about shooting off hordes of monsters and zombies from another world in the hope to know what has happened in the beginning of it all. Besides the action and the endless amount of content it provides, this game is, as I mentioned, a story-focused one and quite a bit like Dying Light, except there ain't just no parkour and it is a lot more like Borderlands. Coming up behind that, we've got Cyberica. I had to include a Cyberpunk style game in today's list as well. From last year though, this is an action-adventure MMORPG with a deep storyline set in a Cyberpunk universe and heavily inspired by 2077. And also, well, another game called Game Deck, which is a top-down detective style story-driven game. Guys, Cyberica offers some well-inclined controls, a really good look for a mobile game. It's not easy to play either, but when it comes to replay value, this has to be one of the best Cyberpunk style games ever made for any platform. Check it out, just in case you missed it. At number 19, we've got over here Oceanhorn, an action casual platform adventure. For those of you new, probably what you get by mixing Uncharted with Zelda, albeit more on the Zelda side because it's mainly a puzzle adventure rather than an action, but nonetheless, a story-focused game and pretty good in every single element for a free one. It's got great controls, great graphics, great story, and about 24 hours of gameplay too. At number 20, from a little over 2 years ago, we've got over here Frostborn sitting on the Play Store with over 5 million downloads as a co-op survival game with MMORPG elements. This is a team-based one where with other Vikings, you get to go around building bases, fight other players, but mostly AIs. Game is awesome, it's got quite surprising elements for its type, survival stuff. The graphics are nice too, and it is all the way free. Check it out, the game will take you down for 500 megabytes of space. Moving on, we've got over here, of course, the one and only Exile Survival. This is probably the ultimate mobile dinosaur-based game at the moment, sitting on the Play Store with over 10 million downloads and a 3GB storage requirement ever since release, over 80 different dinosaurs and primal creatures for you to capture and tame, on top of all the survival goodness. If you've ever wanted to play a mobile version of Ark, this is pretty much a console quality game and it is extremely fun in nature. Give it a shot. Coming up behind that from July this year, the first time I'm actually mentioning this one as it underwent the shadow of a lot of bigger releases, we've got over here Dead Wasteland, a semi-tactical shooter, but not really though, more like a survival RPG open world shooter. Just imagine a Dead Island game but made by an indie developer and set in some desert. If that idea alone does thrill you, this game is in fact free and very fun to get the hang of as well. It's also offline. Moving on to number 23, we've got Chase Hit and Run. Actually the latest game released in the whole list. This came our way only less than a week ago as a minimalistic Arabian-style desert-based open-world action driving game in which your whole goal is to just be a mindless car chaser. So here's the thing, if you do like drifting, Arabian style, I guess, and the idea that such stuff gives you thrill in real life, you should play this one. Otherwise, I'm glad your choices are smarter. I don't know why I'm being so salty. Anyway, here's how it looks. At number 24, we have Vice Online. This is frankly one of the best games in general and not just in the open world field. The game has been around since a couple of months ago and it has gathered north of 1 million daily players as well. It's got a pretty good review scores as well, you could check them out on both platforms. Long story short, if you do like Grand Theft Auto games, this is probably the closest you get to have hands on. It has a huge world and will take you down for only 400 megabytes of space. From earlier June this year, as one of the few superhero games we've been coming across recently that actually legitimately works fine, we've got something called Green Rope Hero, which is probably like a lot of other games in today's list, except it's actually fun. You get a juicy variety of cars and vehicles of any kind to ride around with. You can even use ropes like Spider-Man. It's almost bug-free, the game, and there's some ads, but nothing you couldn't really avoid by playing offline, so keep it in mind. Next up, we have Police Patrol Sim, the old typical Law and Order police sort of simulation, but actually made in a way to feel like a Grand Theft Auto game where you could just earn respect, build a reputation, and eventually unlock new weapons and vehicles, and even characters. This game is pretty big in scale. It's taking it out for only 100 megabytes of space for some reason. It's been sitting on the Play Store since last year, downloaded over 10 million times, and very, very well received as well. From only a month ago, we've got over here finally the one and only Grand Saga. This is one of the most anticipated MMORPGs of the past few years that's been promised a global release ever since on the Play Store, and it is now finally here. You gotta use the link down in the description. It is a cross-generational support sort of game, which previously came out in Korea only and now in its English version. Check it out, this game's already downloaded almost 1 million times. From earlier June this year, we've got over here Carson San Andreas. This is technically a driving sim and a racing game to an extent with a decent amount of content for its type, obviously as the title suggests. So this game takes place in San Andreas and is pretty much like Grand Theft Auto, except you can't really leave the car, but you get to drive a very diverse pool of visually advanced, really amazing cars and with some amazing controls to go with. That's it. Number 29 over here, we've got Dragon Sails with the most positive review scores in today's list. This is an action pirate ship battling sim and quite huge in scale, almost a semi-open world RPG. Quite surprising, the game only takes you 400 megabytes of space. If you do like action-packed pirate stuff, good control system on boats and a lot of rewards, this game is definitely one of a kind and it literally delivers whatever you see right over here. And last but not least, just one last biggest game of the year, probably as an honorable mention only, this is Tower of Fantasy, an open world, well technically MMORPG, that's been in development for 4 years before its release as a cross-platform support online game only, and it's now available worldwide since August this year. So far the game's been having over 5 million active players, it gets regular weekly updates, it is addictive as hell. The only problem with it though is it takes you down for 10 gigabytes of space.